Alexios Komnenos was born into a powerful Byzantine family. His father, John Komnenos, and mother, Anna Dalasson, were deeply connected to the empire's ruling elite, and his uncle Isaac I had briefly ruled as emperor in the mid-11th century. When Isaac abdicated, John refused the throne and chose a monastic life, leaving the imperial succession to Constantine X Ducas. Alexios and his elder brother Manuel first gained recognition under Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes, showing courage and skill in battles against the advancing Seljuk Turks. Later, under Emperors Michael VII Ducas and Nikephoros III Botaniates, Alexios and another brother, Isaac, took part in several campaigns, suppressing revolts and securing key regions across Asia Minor and the Balkans. In 1074, a rebellion by Western mercenaries, led by Roussel de Bayeul, broke out in Asia Minor. Alexios managed to defeat them 2 years later, proving his growing military talent. By 1078, he had risen to command the field army in the western provinces and led decisive victories over the uprisings of Nikephoros Bryennios and Nikephoros Basileikes. Though ordered to fight his own brother-in-law, Nikephoros Melissenos, he refused to turn against his kin. Despite this, he retained his position, as his leadership was vital in the empire's looming confrontation with the Norman forces, led by Robert Guiscard. As preparations for the Norman War continued, tensions grew at court. Members of the Ducas faction, wary of Emperor Botaniates' plans, approached Alexios to lead a coup. His mother, Anna Dalasson, and Empress Maria of Alania, widow of 2 emperors and mother of the young Constantine Ducas, played central roles in this plot. Maria feared for her son's inheritance, as Botaniates intended to pass the throne to one of his own relatives. Through a clever political arrangement, Maria adopted Alexios as her son, cementing his claim to imperial authority. This act also made him the adoptive brother of Constantine Ducas and allowed the Komnenos family to unite with the Ducai under a shared cause. Anna Dalasson orchestrated the family's next moves with extraordinary skill. When Alexios and Isaac secretly left the capital in early 1081 to gather troops, she led the remaining family members to take refuge in Hagia Sophia, claiming protection under the Virgin Mary. Pretending innocence, she told the emperor that her sons were loyal servants wrongfully accused of treason. Her dramatic plea inside the cathedral forced Botaniates to publicly swear an oath on the cross, guaranteeing her family's safety. This maneuver gave Alexios time to seize imperial horses, assemble forces, and approach the city without interference. On April 1, 1081, after bribing the guards, Alexios and Isaac entered Constantinople and overthrew the emperor, securing the throne for the Komnenoi. Rumors spread that Alexios had grown close to Empress Maria of Alania, whose beauty was well known throughout the empire. Although some believed he intended to marry her, his mother ensured a more strategic match by arranging his union with Irene Ducaina, granddaughter of the influential Caesar John Ducas. To preserve the alliance, Alexios at first confirmed Maria's son Constantine as co-emperor, but this changed after the birth of his own son, John, in 1087. Constantine was removed from succession, and Maria withdrew to a monastery. With his power secure and family firmly established, Alexios I Komnenos began one of the most transformative reigns in Byzantine history. The reign of Alexios I Komnenos, which lasted 37 years, was marked by constant struggle and determination. From the very beginning, he faced the powerful Norman invasion led by Robert Guiscard and his son Bohemond, who seized Dyrrhachium and Corfu before advancing deep into Greece and besieging Larissa. Alexios initially suffered several defeats, but his persistence and diplomacy eventually turned the tide. He secured aid from Henry IV, the German king, promising a vast sum of gold in return for attacking the Normans in Italy, which forced them to retreat and defend their homeland. He also gained the allegiance of Henry, Count of Monte Sant'Angelo, whose recognition of Alexios' authority would mark the final extension of Byzantine influence in Italy. The Norman threat faded after Guiscard's death in 1085, allowing the empire to regain much of its lost territory. With the Western Front stabilized, Alexios turned his attention to unrest in the Balkans. In Thrace, religious dissidents known as Bogomils and Paulicians joined forces with the Pechenegs from beyond the Danube, creating chaos along the northern frontier. Many Paulician soldiers deserted their posts, weakening imperial defense. Once the Norman danger was gone, Alexios struck back, confiscating rebel lands, which in turn provoked further uprisings. During one of these revolts near Philippopolis, the Byzantine general Gregory Pakorianos was killed in battle. In 1087, the Pechenegs invaded Thrace again, and although Alexios attempted to retaliate across the Danube, his forces were defeated, and he was forced to pay tribute. 3 years later, the Pechenegs returned, this time coordinating with a Turkish fleet led by Tzakas, the brother-in-law of the Sultan of Rum. Alexios managed to save the empire through a brilliant alliance with the nomadic Cumans, whose army helped him crush the Pechenegs at the Battle of Livonian in 1091, ending their threat once and for all. However, the peace was short-lived. In 1094, the Cumans themselves invaded Byzantine lands, this time supporting a man who falsely claimed to be Constantine Diogenes, the son of the former emperor Romanos IV. The rebellion was crushed after the pretender's death near Adrianople. With the Balkans pacified, Alexios focused on reclaiming Asia Minor, which had fallen largely under Seljuk Turkish control. By the time Alexios took power, the Seljuks dominated most of Anatolia. He regained parts of the coastal areas through a series of raids and alliances with local militias, but the Turks remained a constant threat. Western support proved crucial. Robert of Flanders, returning from pilgrimage to Jerusalem, aided the emperor in several engagements against the Turks, even routing their forces in one encounter. Recognizing the empire's weakness, Alexios sought help from the West and renewed diplomatic contact with the papacy. In 1095, his envoys appealed directly to Pope Urban II at Piacenza, asking for military assistance. Alexios expected a few hired soldiers, but instead the Pope's call led to the vast movement known as the First Crusade. The first wave, the so-called People's Crusade, consisted mainly of untrained peasants led by Peter the Hermit. Their undisciplined march through Byzantine lands caused devastation, and Alexios quickly ferried them across to Asia Minor to prevent further damage. There, they were wiped out by the Turks. The second wave, the Prince's Crusade, was far more organized. Led by nobles such as Godfrey of Bouillon, Bohemond of Taranto, and Raymond of Toulouse, they reached Constantinople one by one. Alexios demanded that each swear an oath of loyalty and promise to return any former Byzantine lands they might capture. Using skillful diplomacy, he supported and supplied the Crusaders while reclaiming lost provinces. After the Crusaders captured Nicaea in 1097, they handed it over to Alexios, and his generals restored imperial control over much of western Anatolia. Cities such as Chios, Smyrna, and Ephesus were once again under Byzantine rule. Despite these achievements, relations with the Crusaders soured. When Bohemond seized Antioch and refused to return it, open conflict erupted. Eventually, in 1108, Bohemond submitted and accepted vassalage to Alexios under the Treaty of Diabolis. The emperor's careful balance of diplomacy and strategy restored the empire's prestige in the east and reaffirmed its dominance in the Aegean. In his later years, Alexios continued to face both natural and political turmoil. In 1106, a violent storm brought down the great statue of Constantine in Constantinople, killing many nearby, a sign that many saw as ominous. Even while suffering from illness, Alexios continued to campaign, repelling repeated Turkish incursions into Asia Minor and finally defeating the Sultan of Iconium at Philomelion in 1117, his last major victory. Despite his successes, Alexios' popularity waned in his final decades. His harsh measures against religious sects, particularly the Bogomils, earned him criticism. He even ordered the execution of their leader, Basil, after public theological debates. He was deeply devoted to military life and often took command personally, leaving the daily administration of the empire to his mother, Anna Dalecen. She had long been his most trusted advisor and was granted the title of Augusta, a position that usually belonged to the empress. Her influence, however, caused friction with Irene Doukaina, Alexios' wife, and the imperial household became divided between the two powerful women. Toward the end of his life, Alexios faced anxiety over the succession. Although he had crowned his son, John II Komnenos, as co-emperor when the boy was only 5, Empress Iran sought to place their daughter Anna and her husband, Nikephoros Bryennios, on the throne instead. The emperor's declining health and family rivalries created uncertainty within the court, marking the close of one of Byzantium's most complex and eventful reigns. Throughout his long rule, Alexios I Komnenos not only fought against foreign enemies, but also had to suppress numerous internal revolts that constantly threatened his authority. The political instability of the time meant that he faced more uprisings than almost any other Byzantine emperor, as ambitious generals, pretenders, and governors sought to claim the throne for themselves. Before the First Crusade, several conspiracies and rebellions erupted. A monk named Reichtor claimed to be the deposed Emperor Michael VII and persuaded Robert Guiscard to use his claim as justification for invading Byzantine territory. In 1084, a group of senators and army officers secretly plotted against Alexios, but the plan was exposed before it spread widely. To avoid panic, Alexios chose not to execute the plotters, but banished the wealthiest among them and seized their property. Around the same period, the Turkish emir Tsakas declared himself emperor in 1092, while Constantine Humbertopoulos, once a loyal ally who had helped Alexios rise to power, later joined a conspiracy with an Armenian named Aribis. Other uprisings involved governors and nobles such as John Komnenos in Dyrrhachium, Theodore Gebras in Trebizond, and even Alexios' own brother-in-law, Michael Taranites. Pretenders claiming descent from Emperor Romanos IV also caused unrest. Nikephoros Diogenes and a false Leo Diogenes both tried to rally followers to their cause. Elsewhere, revolts broke out on the islands. Charikes led a rebellion in Crete, and Rhapsamates attempted to establish his own rule in Cyprus. The years following the First Crusade brought fresh turmoil. In 1106, a wealthy senator named Salomon joined forces with the influential Animus family to organize a failed plot against the emperor. Around the same time, Gregory Taranites, another governor of Trebizond, also rebelled. A few years later, an illegitimate descendant of a Bulgarian prince named Aaron, conspired to assassinate Alexios during a campaign near Thessaloniki. The plot was exposed when slanderous pamphlets targeting Empress Irene were found in her tent, revealing the conspirators' intentions. Out of respect for Irene's royal Bulgarian ancestry, Alexios spared Aaron's life, but exiled him instead. Despite these constant threats, Alexios also found time to reform the empire's collapsing economy. In 1092, he completely reorganized the Byzantine monetary system. The old gold solidus, which had been greatly devalued, was replaced by a new, high-quality gold coin known as the hyperpyron. This new currency, smaller but purer than its predecessor, restored trust in imperial coinage. Alongside it, Alexios introduced several subsidiary coins made of mixed metals, an electrum piece containing both gold and silver, a lower value coin of Bilon alloy, and copper denominations for everyday use. This reform stabilized trade and financial transactions within the empire and abroad. Alexios's legacy was immense. By the time of his death, he had guided Byzantium through decades of crisis, defended it from Norman, Pecheneg, and Seljuk threats, and restored its stability. His political strategy transformed the empire's structure. Instead of ruling through distant bureaucracy, he bound the aristocracy to the throne by weaving them into his own extended family. This system of kinship politics ensured loyalty, but also eroded the old merit-based administrative tradition. The new hierarchy of noble titles, such as Sebastocrator for his brother Isaac and Panhypersebastos for his son-in-law Nikephoros Bryennios, reflected this blending of family and governance. Though this approach secured unity during Alexios's lifetime, it later weakened the independence of imperial administration. Nonetheless, his reign marked the beginning of a renewed century of power and continuity, and every emperor who followed him was connected to the Komnenos dynasty by blood or marriage, carrying forward the political and familial legacy he had built.